What we're going to show you here is a sample of what a fire setup might have looked like. The one thing that we should probably explain is the outside makeup of this fire set they wouldn't have had. One, it was heavy to carry. Two, they would not have had the concerns that we have about where we're setting up a fire, controlling the fire, and making sure it doesn't get outside the area that we're looking at cooking. But the setup itself is pretty standard. These were hand forged out of steel, obviously. They were heavy duty. They were designed to take the heavy weight of Dutch ovens and these 2.5 gallon coffee boilers. These Dutch ovens probably would have had holes partially dug out of the ground if possible, and then they would have put the coals in the bottom, put the Dutch oven in on top of it, and then cover the lid with coals also. It is an oven, and being made out of cast iron, it generates heat real well, and you can control the heat, which is probably one of the biggest things for the Chuck Wagon cook to have a knowledge of, and one of the things I found most difficult to learn. But the point would be that they would have to start these fires 3 times a day to prepare the meal for the cowboys, and it was no small task to make sure that they came up with enough wood to get a fire so that they could get the coffee hot, get the biscuits and the beans warm enough, then shut it down, move up the trail again. So what we have on display over there is our friends out there, while they were vacationing in South Dakota, Byron and Cindy Russell picked this up, some authentic buffalo chips. And that is really relevant because buffalo chips would have been a source of fuel that they would have used going down the trail if they were unable to come up with any wood for their fires. So along the way, the staples of the meal were pretty standard: beans, biscuits, and coffee. And what we show here is that what we had left over from making our biscuits in the Dutch oven, we just take the extra stuff, mix in some sugar and cinnamon, and make some cinnamon rolls. And the cowboys would have loved anything sweet, remembering that a lot of these cowboys were very young men who were out of work after the Civil War that hooked up with these cattle drives. Another thing for the coffee is coffee, as we mentioned, made by Arbuckle's. Inside each 1 pound bag of Arbuckle's coffee, they put a peppermint stick. And if the cook wasn't interested in grinding his own coffee, there was no shortage of volunteer cowboys who would be more than willing to grind up a pound of coffee, knowing that they would get that peppermint stick in return for their work. So there was a lot of things that went on that these young men did to find a way to enjoy what little bit of opportunity they had on the trail to have a good time, and something like a cinnamon roll or a peppermint stick was a very big deal. So at the end, coffee, beans, and biscuits, that went up the trail. That's what they ate for 3 months. They did have some meat, but that would have been meat that would have been processed and prepared before they left. If they had a cow that went bad, or if a calf was born along the way, they would process that, because injured cow or a calf would just slow down the cattle drive. But as a general rule, they weren't going to process or slaughter a grown steer, which might be worth $25 at the end of the cattle drive, just so the guys could have some meat in their beans. So that was it. This is pretty much it. Dutch ovens, cast iron was a big deal, and every good cook had good cast iron cookware to work with.